Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis.
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
And welcome to the NYRA Bets preview of the Acorn Stakes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this preview of Friday's Acorn Stakes, what is sure to be a fantastic showdown between some of the top 3-year-old fillies that we have in the country. But before we get to that, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. Listen, Kaylie, we had a really fun time tracking the road to the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby.
Lots of fun.
We did. And a lot of these fillies that we saw were very familiar names to us, but there are a couple of new names, most notably a horse like Shred the Gnar, who we'll talk a little bit more about. But it is fun to see these horses now come back here 5 weeks after the Kentucky Oaks and for another shot at potentially trying to beat who is the dominant 3-year-old filly right now, Good Cheer.
Definitely. And your opinion of the race and how you think it's going to play out definitely runs through Good Cheer.
Yeah.
And it was super exciting. We got to see her today in the paddock.
Yeah.
And she looked great, obviously. And, you know, it's just nice to see how good she looks. I mean, I don't really remember ever seeing her super close up. Today I got a better chance. And I thought she looked tremendous. Her coat looked great.
Yeah,
so many things to like. I mean, me personally, I don't think there's a big reason to play against Good Cheer here. Yeah. She's giving me a lot of, Torpedo Anna vibes, honestly, going into this. Well, and I think that she should be getting a lot more attention. I think this is a very exciting race. We have an undefeated 3-year-old filly that literally has won under wraps in her races. So we really don't know what the limit could be for her. Yeah. And she's very exciting.
That is the thing is, everybody kind of, the knock on her, if there is a knock, is that her speed figures have kind of plateaued. She doesn't kind of run any faster than she ran in the previous race. But to your point, she does it under wraps every time. Luis Saez isn't asking her for that much more. Very similar to Torpedo Anna, who Brian Hernandez Jr. rarely asked her for more. Then when he finally did, we saw what happened in the Travers, and she ran a hell of a race. So that is something I think is a great point that you made there in terms of this horse wins open lengths every single time. I mean, that Kentucky Oaks was a dominant effort. I mean, she was wide and the slop did not matter and just blew by everybody like they were nothing. And so she's super impressive. But you do have a new figure, like I said, in Shred the Gnar, who's come onto the scene here. We'll have to see about track conditions. There's obviously a little bit of rain in the forecast, though she handled the wet conditions fantastically in Louisville just 5 weeks ago. So listen, let's dive in and talk a little bit more about this field. And obviously, like I said, we can talk for a while about a horse like Good Cheer, who is a perfect 7-4-7 and won that Kentucky Oaks under wraps by 2 widening lengths. And, like I said, she's plateaued a little bit on the speed figures, 91 the last 2 times out. She doesn't have the highest buyer speed figure in the field, which feels like the first time that might be the case actually for her. But again, there's so little you can knock about her form. She has the ability to lay close, can sit a little further back. Just incredible versatility. And Brad Cox clearly knows how to train these horses up.
Definitely. And you look at the steady progression in her speed figures, obviously running mid-80s, as a 2-year-old. And then as a 3-year-old, she steps up 91 last 2 times out. So she ran true to her form last time out in the Kentucky Oaks. She did what had to be done. And these were the same speed figures that we saw from a horse like Torpedo Anna.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not playing against Good Cheer here. She's really exciting. There's a lot of speed in this race. And she should sit a really nice trip. Not even like I think she needs it. I think she's just that dominant.
I think she is too. The 1 1/8 should suit her fantastically with all this speed to your point. And listen, the thing is she's been favored in every single race and she's delivered in every single race. If you're playing this as some sort of a pick 5 sequence, it's really hard for me not to say she's your single and you move on. She feels like the free square. And then you can get creative in some of the other legs, which is what you ultimately want to do. If you have this strong of an opinion, she's your 1 to 2 favorite. So
I agree.
Listen, single her and then come up with some fun ideas in a race like the Ogden Phipps. Come up with some fun ideas in some of the Just a Game or some of these other turf races. That's going to be the fun part of this. So listen, she is dominant in what she does. And like I said, ran that 91 last time out. And again, that was over a wet track and a sloppy track, and she did not matter to her at all. And she's never taken a step back. You know, while her speed figures have plateaued, she's never regressed in her career. So there's little doubt that she's going to start regressing now, especially after what we saw today in the paddock.
Yeah, definitely. She looked amazing.
Yeah.
So for sure, she's a single for me.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And I think you have to get a little bit creative about who you're using underneath. If,
Yeah.
you know, you can get creative with some prices in here underneath.
Mm-hmm.
For me, Shred the NYRA, I believe that she's a really good filly. Obviously, she got a 94 last time out. That's great. I mean, it's a better figure than Good Cheer. But if you read between the lines, I mean, Good Cheer has just been facing like a lot better.
Yes.
And also way tougher races. Obviously, the Shred the NYRA broker maiden and then stepped out into allowance optional claiming company, and she ran a really good race. Obviously went gate to wire there, won by 7 lengths. But when you think about it, there's a lot of other speed in this race, and I think that those horses are going to end up burning themselves out a little bit on the front end, and it's going to set up nicely for a horse not only like Good Cheer, but also someone else that I use coming from off the pace or coming from, you know, a little bit out of it underneath Good Cheer, because that's just the way I see this setting up.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a couple of interesting points, and I'll put our picks up here so people can see where we're going in this race. But listen, Shred the NYRA, a couple of things to point out. One, steady progression from a speed for 80, 89, 94. So we're moving in the right direction while stretching out. I couldn't help but note the pedigree, because there's a certain horse that you really like on Saturday that is an into mischief out of a Bernardini mare that sold for a pretty penny in a Fasig-Tipton sale. I'm just saying, I'm not saying this horse is Sovereignty, but it is interesting that it shares a very, very similar pedigree to Sovereignty in that regard.
It is interesting.
And so, it's a good cross. Exactly. It's a very good cross. Yeah. So, but I think the big thing with Shred the NYRA, in addition to having to deal with a horse like Look Forward, in addition to having to deal with a horse like Lucara, maybe even Scottish Lassie on the inside, switching off Lasix.
Yeah.
And that's such a big question for these horses that have never run off Lasix before. Switching off, sometimes you see that regression. And so I like this horse a lot. I think she's super talented. She's my second choice. She's your third choice or third position in the race. But I can't see her genuinely challenging Good Cheer as the win contender.
Me neither, or at least not so much as, you know, to use her on top, or even under, you know, or to even put her on your ticket along with Good Cheer is mostly the point. I think you have to take a stance between these two. This filly would have to step up and do a lot to beat a horse like Good Cheer based off, you know, who she's been facing in her last couple of starts.
She has. But listen, let's talk about a horse that I know you've been high. We've both been high on this horse for a while, which is Bless the Broken for Will Walden. This horse ran a tremendous Kentucky Oaks, I thought. Finished third that day. Wonderful video, by the way, if you've not seen it, that I believe it was ABR put out of that. And you learn a little bit of the backstory about this horse and the name behind it, and Will as well. And that was a great effort. Johnny Velasquez has now been aboard 3 times in a row, remains aboard. And again, when the conditions are sloppy, potentially, this horse does really good running. So if the forecast is a little bit on the wet side, this is one who's going to move forward. 10-1 on the morning line. This is maybe a good option if you want to play this race vertically.
Honestly, when I first saw this, I completely agree with what you just said. And when I first saw this field, I was kind of nervous that she would be a shorter price because of how well she ran in the Oaks. And then I saw 10-1. Granted, I think she'll take a bit of money. I don't think that it's going to be way off from the morning line, though. And I'm pretty excited about that. You have a full field of some pretty nice horses. And I think a lot of people think maybe her good efforts come over off tracks. And if we do get some rain, even better. But just in general, I think she's a really nice filly that's been progressing so nicely. If you look at the speed figures, as well as the fact that she trains really well over fast tracks. The works that she's been putting in are no joke. I think that she's a really serious filly, and I like her because she can come from, you know, last, and also she sat close in some of her efforts too. And she's a very consistent horse in her last 4 starts. I mean, she hasn't been off the board. You have to take her very seriously coming in here, in my opinion.
I agree. She is one that I think is going to continue to move forward. She's going to get the pace to run at. She's going to go a very similar setup to what she got in the Kentucky Oaks, which, again, ran up for third that day. And I'll be honest with you, I agree with David Aragona. A lot of the time, I have a hard time thinking you're going to get 10-1 on this horse, just because that third place effort in the Kentucky Oaks, Drexel Hill is not running back, who would finish second. This is the next closest horse to Good Cheer. Nobody else has been within shouting distance of Good Cheer. So, at least Bless the Broken was, within 3 lengths of her. She was, not, would she make it up a ton of ground late? No, but but she was passing everybody else in the field. That's for sure. So I think, again, Johnny Velasquez aboard. I like this combination a lot.
And when you think about it, she passed a whole bunch of other horses who finished last that day. LaCara, things got really heated up on the front end. That brings you to another horse. I don't think either of us used her. But LaCara, I mean, to talk about the Oaks and the horses coming out of the Oaks. Obviously, this horse I don't think could sustain all the pace pressure that she had to face in the Kentucky Oaks whatsoever. And this is, I mean, she's been running hard and training hard. I mean, there's too much speed in this race. If she was lone speed, that would be another story. I'd be scared of her. She has the speed, or even just one other horse, but there's a ton of horses in here that are forwardly placed and are fast.
Exactly. Like I said, a horse like Scottish Lassie, presumably from the inside rail, is going to need to go. Then you have Shred the Gnar, who's legitimately fast. And then you have a horse like Look Forward, who we both kind of like, but this is a horse that's a sprinter, really. And it's got sprinter speed, is now stretching out. That horse is fast. So LaCara, listen, you and I were kind of all the way against her. She was the kind of best horse that we were against. I think the way you could frame it that way in the Kentucky Oaks. And, she finished 9th by 13 lengths. I mean, she just got burned up when Tenmo kind of went at her early. And there's going to be a whole lot of horses going at her early here. So I can't see her sustaining this suddenly.
Me neither. I think that she's been running in some really hard races, tough company.
Yes,
and
that's a good point.
She's likely to get burnt out. And Scottish Lassie is another horse that, we saw was pretty promising as a 2-year-old. Obviously won the Frizette, a grade 1.
Yeah.
And then she came back this year, and you could read that speed figure. First off, the layoff, that's a pretty good effort. She ran better than she did in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Yeah. But in my opinion, I just, a lot of a theme that we've been seeing with a lot of these McKinseys, and it's too soon to tell. I think there are some outliers like Chancer McPatrick, for example. But a theme that we've been seeing with a lot of them is that they kind of have been tipping off at 3, or at least maybe are more suited for one-turn race. Who knows what it will end up being? He's a new sire, but just something I've been noticing lately.
Well, to your point, it's interesting. Out of his first crop, his 2-year-olds are winning at a 16% clip. His 3-year-olds are winning at a 10% clip. So it would certainly indicate that they're dropping off a little bit there.
Interesting.
But you do pick up Irad Ortiz Jr. on the mount, taking over for Eric Cancel. So that no disrespect to anyone, but that's a jockey upgrade in terms of Irad. Yeah, absolutely. But listen, the other horse that we both think is at least a little bit interesting is Look Forward. The pedigree is sprint. I mean, you have a Bolt Doro out of an Into Mischief mare that doesn't really scream a mile and an eighth. I mean, Bolt Doros are probably best at a mile. Into Mischief's, again, not really known for being a great broodmare sire necessarily. But trainer Michael McCarthy brought her here. Umberto Rispoli up on the mount. If nothing else, is going to be an educational effort for Rispoli to get a couple of races in before Saturday. But this is a horse that can pass horses, but usually it does so going shorter. The 2 times this horse has tried to go long recently against Graded Stakes Company, and has not worked out well. So I think that's kind of the main issue here. But certainly that 8 Bells was a very impressive effort, going 7 furlongs at Churchill Downs last time out.
Yeah, definitely. I thought the 8 Bells was a really impressive effort. I think that she's dangerous because she draws to the outside of all the other speed.
Yeah.
And I think with the way that the track has been playing, and just the fact that she can be the one that ends up in the most favorable position, and LaCara and someone else might be running a race of their own, she might have, a clear lead. Who really knows how it's going to play out? She drew to the outside of all of them. I just thought that she looked a little bit dangerous in here. I don't think I was too high on her. I think I have her in 4th.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, but she, I think she could play a role, or at least stick around, because I think that she's going to be, on top of a pretty fast pace, and she should stick around with the way that the track has been playing.
I think that's a great point. We'll kind of wrap things up there, but that is the fact that, we're recording this Wednesday night. And one of the things that has been interesting, and just watching the very first day at Saratoga, and again, we didn't have any rain on Wednesday, obviously, so weather could certainly change the way the track plays, things like that. But one thing you noted was horses really weren't making up ground on the outside that much. And you had a couple gate to wire winners, and you had a couple of horses that really won the, stalking the pace, being very close. You didn't see a lot of horses coming from well off the pace, though. we also had a lot of predictable winners on Wednesday as well. So it was, that's the thing. That's where you always have to be careful about interpreting track bias, because you never want to read too much into it. If a bunch of 9-5, 7-5, 2-1 horses are winning, you go, well, that's who's supposed to win this race. They just naturally are fast. That doesn't mean there's a bias necessarily. So something to continue to pay attention to.
Exactly. I completely agree. I mean, I can't make the statement or the generalization because it just happened to be that the 2 races I bet on today and watched, the 2 horses that were on the outside and were supposed to pass, and they just could not get by. And I watched it happen twice. It was with Sterling Silver and the pastor horse, Amelia Green horse, the number 10. I'm forgetting the name. Looked like they were going to go by. I mean, I don't know, just something to pay attention to. And it should everything should even out by at least 5.
You would hope so, but again, rain can change these things. The way track plays can certainly change these things. So it's something to pay attention to and take into consideration. But listen, you and I both think Good Cheer, she's the single. We're not going to try to get creative in the Acorn. I think you can get creative underneath. I think a horse like Bless the Broken provides that opportunity to get a little creative underneath if you want to make some money vertically. But listen, view this race as a potential free square, and and appreciate a horse that, listen, as a bettor, you always want to try to find a price. But as a bettor, the next best thing to finding a price is a consistent favorite. And that's what she is.
You're
She's
right.
7 for 7 winning.
Exactly.
She's 7 for 7 as a favorite. If I'm going to bet a favorite, I at least want to bet a favorite who can win as the favorite. And she does it all the time.
Exactly.
So,
it's just so great to root for her.
Exactly.
Because she's just so good. So
she is. And, we'll see. I shred the NYRA. I'll be interested to see how that horse runs. I have my questions. That's why I have her second. I just don't see her as a main threat to Good Cheer in terms of winning. But I'm eager to see what she could do, because otherwise it really does become a Torpedo Anna situation, because then there's, outside of Good Cheer stablemate Immersive, who's working her way back, there's nobody in this division who really holds a candle to Good Cheer.
Definitely. And you really do wonder if Brad Cox is going to put those 2 up against each other. Like, how do you even?
Well, and that's where it helps that he has his barn in Churchill.
Exactly.
And he'll have his barn up here in New York over the summer. And they
might just each dominate on either end. I mean, who knows?
I have a feeling it'll be interesting to see which one we end up getting in the Coaching Club of America Oaks, some races like that. And that'll be a lot of fun. But they're going to meet up in the distaff, I think, at some point, later this year. So listen, hopefully. Really fun race. Exactly. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And so really fun race, but appreciate, Kaylie, you tuning in and coming in, hanging out with me to do this preview, and appreciate everybody tuning in and watching here on NYRA Bets. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe today. For Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.